I know I'm not breaking any news here by saying that there is a war going on over the Lord of the Rings, but it's real, it's already happening. But even more than that, there is a sinister contest being waged to claim Tolkien's legacy and the crown of redefining fantasy and fiction. Some are doing it for their own hubris. Some others are in it for the money. Some are looking for immortality, and a few hope to preserve Tolkien's position as the granddaddy of fantasy. All of this is happening as the storytelling landscape is undergoing massive changes, as the war for modern myth is raging on all around us. Just as I claimed in my video about the war on modern myth, we fans and novice authors have a very special role to play in these conflicts. So, buckle up, because I'm going to get into some business discussions, Hollywood gossip, conspiracy theories, and writing advice. Hi there everyone, Lars here from Camille's Harem, not just a podcast for novice writers by novice writers, but also a YouTube channel by novice writers for novice writers, because writing is an adventure, it's more fun with friends. Most nerds and movie fans have by now heard that David Zaslav, the CEO of Warner Brothers and Discovery, threw the gauntlet at Bezos and Amazon's Payne and McKay during the company's most recent earnings call. He announced that more Lord of the Rings movies are on the way after the War of the Rohirrim, which is a movie that I'm actually really excited for. But this wasn't the beginning of the war, or this particular battle. That was already kicked off by Payne and McKay purposefully coming to trash as much of Tolkien's works as possible and supplant it all with their lazy first draft fanfiction. But what people haven't paid enough attention to is Vin Diesel taking the opportunity to style himself as the new J.R.R. Tolkien and what that actually means in the grander scheme of things. I mean, when we actually look at it, it feels a bit like a joke, but it isn't! Courtesy of Ignacio M. Garcia Medina, we have the El American article, Idiocy of the Week. Vin Diesel compares himself to Tolkien. I'll leave a link to the article in the description, but here we have some quick excerpts. Vin Diesel, star of the Fast and Furious franchise, said in an interview for Variety that the hardest part of making a franchise like his is not the filming or the demanding action scenes, but the work behind the screen. According to him, the thinking, the expanding of the story is the hardest part, adding that this is the reason why Tolkien stopped writing. More on that later. Later, the interviewer states that The Fast and the Furious is the Lord of the Rings of action movies, and Vin Diesel enthusiastically agrees. Well said. Not to take credit away from Vin Diesel, since giving continuity to a mythology, as Vin Diesel calls it, of Fast and Furious might not be easy. The truth is that no one can explain how a movie about low-level criminals who participate in illegal car races has managed to have so many sequels that have made so much money. But to compare his films to The Lord of the Rings and himself to J.R.R. Tolkien is a stretch that not even the most tuned car of his could jump. Of course, we must give him credit for his self-confidence. Now, I will say right here, this is another example of hubris overtaking humility. Vin Diesel, love him or hate him, has a track record of being a diva and placing himself on a pedestal so high, even the Pantheon would blush. It makes sense that he would want to compare himself to Tolkien, even if he got it wrong, though. Tolkien never stopped writing, however. Vin Diesel absolutely got that wrong. Tolkien also never stopped editing. That's a reason for why there's enough material for Middle-earth to bury the Fast and Furious franchise. And that's also why it makes infinitely more sense when compared to the ridiculousness of the Fast and Furious franchise. Now, to answer Ignacio's question of why on earth it is that there are so many Fast and Furious movies, I actually do have a quick conspiracy theory that I hope will explain this whole situation. Are you ready? The real reason why we keep getting Fast and Furious movies is because Vin Diesel is determined to make more movies for his franchise than what exists in the Land Before Time series. I know, you might laugh at this, but seriously! I get that these movies make money, but where's the story? Vin Diesel and the writers are forced to come up with the weirdest plots imaginable to keep things going and make them bigger and better than the last movie in order to make enough money to just justify the next dumb movie. And why is he doing this? Well, because of a conversation between him and a Hollywood executive, and it went something kind of like this.
Vin Diesel, my son, your newest racing movie has made us tons of money. We are pleased. Can you do it again?
Sure, but I'm not doing it for the money. I'm doing it for family.
Whatever floats your boat, kid.
I'm just so grateful to be part of Universal's greatest franchise.
Ah, my boy, The Fast and Furious movies are nowhere near our most prized and treasured films. No, I'm sorry. They just make money to support our hedonistic lifestyles and keep the statues clean.
Statues?
The statues of Littlefoot, Thera, Spike, Petrie, and Ducky. You must have seen them when coming up to the office. Everyone loves Littlefoot, and you can never have enough Ducky. Yup, yup, yup.
This isn't over. I will make a franchise bigger, longer, and more complex than the Land Before Time ever was or is. I will be greater than J.R.R. Tolkien himself. Family.
Oh, don't worry, Ducky. The grumbling 3-man can't hurt you. Not while Daddy's here.
Okay, but seriously, even though I'm confident that Vin Diesel wants to have the longest-running film franchise that Universal owns and be considered a literary genius to boot, this underscores the bizarre, darkly humorous struggle for Tolkien's crown. J.R.R. Tolkien's works were absolutely instrumental in reshaping fantasy as a genre. Even though there were other amazing authors before and during his time, from Robert E. Howard to C.S. Lewis to Anne McCaffrey, Tolkien outstripped them all. He created not only amazing characters and a complex world and history, but he had clearly defined cultures. Music. He created entire languages, religions, showed expertise for warfare, literary styles, romance, politics, and just an amazing economy of words. But all of this is just window dressing to the fact that Tolkien simply wrote phenomenal stories with timeless qualities. I mean, it's pretty easy to do, right? Anyone can do it. Well, despite the efforts of many amazing authors in the decades since Tolkien, no one has even gotten close. Each time we get a premier author like Robert Jordan, we get a very, very long saga that not everyone manages to finish, even though it's a great series. We get J.K. Rowling, whose stories are fun, but they're just a simple ball of tropes and silly shenanigans strung together to tell an entertaining tale that sadly falls short of its true potential. And then we have George R.R. Martin, who can spin a great yarn, but he's a one-trick pony who will never finish A Song of Ice and Fire. And while I have faith in Brandon Sanderson that he might be the man to inherit Tolkien's legacy, his works have not taken the world by storm like Tolkien's Middle-earth has. This is where lazy actors and screenwriters come in, using smoke and mirrors and shielding themselves behind hundreds of puff pieces to make themselves look like the successors to Tolkien's legacy. Vin Diesel thinks that by making a long series with the barest threads that somehow connect his movies together, that he's making the Lord of the Rings of action films. And for their part, Payne and McKay think that because they get to write fan fiction that bears Tolkien's name, that they are somehow geniuses. And why does it matter anyway? Because, well, we are all inevitably drawn to this question of who is the best. And once you know who the best is, we are drawn to tear that person down and take their place. Tolkien's legacy has stood for decades and inspired some of the most decorated films of all time. It has inspired a role-playing game that is beloved across the entire world. It's inspired generations of writers, and it has inspired so many knockoffs that they fill the Library of Congress. And people want to claim that spot. They want to claim the prestige, the power, the money that comes with toppling Tolkien and taking his place. And this leads us then to the conflict, to the war for Tolkien. People like Vin Diesel will be laughed out of the room as they continue to make their movies and their ridiculous claims. And I actually do enjoy the Fast and the Furious movies. They're good popcorn flicks. I can just turn off my brain and laugh as Dom Toretto picks up more and more friends from enemies as if this were a Naruto for speedsters. And there are many others in his shoes. Where things get interesting, however, is between Amazon and Warner Brothers. The big news that is right now going on. Amazon is committed to the Rings of Power and are contractually obligated to make the next 4 seasons and try their best to make them like The Lord of the Rings meets Sopranos meets Shakespeare meets Breaking Bad meets The Deedles. Amazon has not made any money on the Rings of Power. It's embarrassed itself and will likely not gain any more returns. But that's okay, because they have cash to burn and a legacy to usurp. Meanwhile, Warner Brothers needs lots of money after so many failed franchises and endeavors. Lord of the Rings has proven itself very, very lucrative. They want to milk Tolkien's legacy for all it's worth. Now, I'm more partial to their approach since they are bringing back Peter Jackson and are committed to telling stories that complement The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, rather than remaking the movies. A lot of people think that they're going to do a reboot or a remake, but that doesn't make any financial sense. In fact, I'm certain that they've already telegraphed what we're going to get next from Warner Brothers. After having had a look at everything that they're doing, I'm pretty confident that the movies that we're going to get that are part of The Lord of the Rings are going to tell the complete history of the Third Age. While I would love to see the First Age under Jackson's watchful eye and steady hand, the rights to the Silmarillion are all kinds of gobbled and weird and tied up, and the Second Age is being done by Amazon, and making a direct competition to the Rings of Power would invite a publicity war that Warner Brothers does not want to fight. Maybe Peter Jackson and his crew would like to do it, but Warner Brothers does not need any more negative press. This leaves the Third Age open, and the War of the Rohirrim is exactly the kind of story that sits within that well-known history, and its epicness, and it complements the Lord of the Rings movies and their history. Now, going any further down this line of thought is just to dive headfirst into speculation that I have no other reliable basis of information for. But here we have the battle lines drawn in a massive battle, in a massive conflict, in the greater war for modern myth. In one corner, we have the creatives like Vin Diesel hoping to use their own stories to claim Tolkien's crown. In another corner, there are Amazon with Payne and McKay looking to usurp the throne. In another corner, we have Warner Brothers who wants to use Tolkien to make buco bucks. And finally, in the last corner, we have the fans of Tolkien who demand fidelity and good storytelling worthy of the Professor. This is a battle that will be fought in the years to come, right in the middle of a decade where the storytelling landscape is drastically changing. Franchises are rising and dying left and right. More people are becoming illiterate right as the demand for creativity and newer stories is at an all-time high, and ideologies are being wielded as weapons and as a means for creating new stories and getting them out to the masses. And really, all of us creatives stand in a position where we can use this exact same battlefield and all of the technology and programs open to us to also get our stories out there. There is a glut of storytelling. Now, as a fan of Tolkien, I am reserving judgment on all of this, at least as far as the stories go, until I see more. However, as a creative and a novice author, let me say this: no one will take away Tolkien's legacy. It has stood for so long and has survived many attempts to besmirch or replace it. And just like Vin Diesel and the writers over at Amazon, I too at one point wanted to climb the same heights as Tolkien. I wanted my books to also be considered a legendarium. However, as good as it is to be proud of your work and that you want the best for it, we still need to be humble enough to be realistic and assess our need to grow and expand our own skills, that we can always become better. Instead of looking to overthrow Granddaddy Tolkien, instead, focus on writing the best stories that you can. Remember, you need your stories need you, and the world needs your stories. There's a beautiful symbiotic relationship between us writers, our stories, and the people that we share our stories with. If you do your best with your stories, you become a better writer, and hopefully a better person all around through that adventure. And your stories take on a life of their own and become the best that they can be, and they go out into the world to entertain and inspire others. Achieve this high ideal, and I'm confident that Tolkien himself would congratulate you and I on our best efforts. Would he like the stories that we write, though? I'd rather not think about that. Now, to bring this all together, there are so many people vying to steal Tolkien's place of prominence in our culture of storytelling. And this is no accident. Not only is it part of our nature, but it is also a culmination of the war on modern myth, and is a side effect of the crumbling, transforming landscape of how we tell our stories. What we're seeing here is just the beginning in a larger battle, and that's taking place in an even larger conflict. So in the midst of this chaos, we have all the opportunity that we would want to make our mark. And we can promote good stories. We can bring attention to new authors and their stories. And we can promote healthy values. We can advocate for better stories, for better storytelling over just simple ideology. And all of us novice authors out there, there's a space for us as well. The challenge is to create within that space and do the most that we can with what we have. But honestly, it is so worth it to take up that challenge and that adventure. Let other people fight for Tolkien's crown. They will all crash and fail. his legacy will continue to stand. Ultimately, what this battle in the greater war of modern myth is showing us is that there is a massive transformation happening. And if we want to be able to make our mark, and for those of us who are looking to potentially become authors for a living, this means that we need to pay attention. We need to grow and evolve as necessary and take some real risks, put ourselves out there. We have the chance to make our mark as everything is changing. So, I'll end the video here, but I hope that these thoughts help generate more discussions among writers and Tolkien fans alike. There are many greater conversations that should and need to be had. This is a starting point, beyond just arguing and pointing damning fingers at each other. And as we get those discussions started, if you're looking for more writing advice and insights, then please check out our other videos here. You can also pop on over to our podcast, Camille's Harem, and we have writing exercises for all you novice authors to check out over at our Pinterest page. And of course, we would love for you to join our ever-growing community of authors. Links for all of that and more are in the description below. And until the next video, y'all, thank you for joining us on this adventure that we call writing, and tschüss.